So I got finally around to update the FA model. It took me some time to really fine-tune the 5-pin with the new bolts, but once I was figured out, it was working out pretty fast and well, because I can copy a lot of things from the hammer fired models. I do have to say I might need to update the AP bolt edition in the future. It does work, but it's a little bit inconsistent, and that's not necessarily the nozzle itself at fault, but it is the position from the magazine to the nozzle in relation to it. This takes a lot of time because I need to shift it really small amounts forward and backwards to really find the sweet spot to get the correct airflow. It takes a lot of time. I already tried to find it, and with the hammer fired models it seems to be okay-ish. It was not perfect, but okay, good enough, because it took me a really long time to get it close. But I might need to revisit that. So that would mean that then the barrel adapter and the bolt would change, because that needs to then be replaced to have a correct forward or backward motion in relation to the magazine. Besides that, I don't expect much updates anymore on this project. I think it works fine like this. I've said this in the past before, but I know now a lot more about gas blowback systems and what I need to look out for and things like that. So it should be now the best that I can do basically with this platform. Also I noticed that with the how to get the correct bolt weight and spring, it was a lot more consistent now. So it gives me kind of a sense of logic how it worked, and in the past was always kind of wild guess what wasn't correct bolt weight and spring. And to be short about it, it seems to like heavy bolt weights with this new locked 5-pin, so it gets more power to push the bolt back, because then it got more impact, more momentum, let's say, and also more energy to place on the 5-pin to give a really consistent firing, let's say, gas output. So the FPS joule rating is kind of the same, pretty good even, especially for an open bolt system. And also the cycling is a lot more consistent, more reliable. So it should be good. It's only the AP nozzle, again, the airflow is a little bit off, so it's a little bit less reliable on the lower PSI range, let's say. So it would not be my first choice to use with an FA currently. But Tokyo Marine nozzles, or close to it, APS nozzles, those work fine, and the VTEC nozzles like from the 17 or the automatic one, the 18 models, will work fine. So there's also an update. A lot more nozzles are supported with the new FA model. The trigger group can be removed without having to remove the 5-pin. You can just leave that one in, just remove the pin, you can drop it out and take the new trigger pack in for automatic or semi-automatic. There's one big update about it. If you already had the new lower that can house the beta 5-pin, locked 5-pin model, then you're good with the lower. The lower is then the same. But then you do need to print a new fire pin group, because that's really important that is a good match with the bolts. It also really matters that the 5-pin is correct with your bolts. It's specific to the type of bolts you're using. So the VTEC needs the VTEC 5-pin. Besides that, if you have the upper already, you do need to manually mod this. You have to extend this line that's low, goes right here. You need to extend it a bit just to make room for the locked 5 pin, so it goes more. I can make it a little bit thicker so it's stronger. That's the only really modification that you need to do on the upper if you already have printed one. New uppers of course already have this mod. Then you see this weight. If you go for this heavyweight bolt, this is the heaviest that you can go, you will need to use a buffer tube, and you will need to use this new spring cap. The position of the spring guide rod, let's say, is the same. It's only that the openings are now different, so then it can house this metal rod in between it without any issues. But as you can see, if it would fully compress, then this part needs to stick out of the upper. So that's why you need, if you go for this length of metal rod, with this especially, then you would need a buffer tube where it can kind of go into and out. If you use a smaller metal piece, of course, then it can still be done with a collapsible stock or without a stock even. Do keep in mind that the FA, especially with the weights, and it is recommended to use it with the weights, it will shake a lot, so it has a tendency to vibrate the bolts loose. When that happens, when the bolt at the fronts are getting loose, so the barrel can go forward and backwards, that will eat a lot of the momentum away from the system. So it's important that you keep that in check, that it's bolted tightly and in place there. Of course, that goes for the back. If the back buttstock piece can shake loose, that will kind of ruin the reliability of the system. Besides that, I've added some trigger options to it, just different designs, and a compression spring trigger, and the one with AR spring trigger still in there. Small things like that. Also, that if you cannot get your hands on an AR selector spring, then there's a new grip in there that can house a different spring that is more common to buy, easy to find, and that can do kind of the same job. It's a little bit softer but close to it, so it should be good enough. So in that sense, it's more easy to build. You don't really need any official AR parts. So for people in Europe and Asia, it's a lot easier than to make one. So it were all small things like that that makes it now a lot better parts wise. So you will notice that when you look in the PDF, it's more things explained about it and things like that. But yeah, with that said, the new bolts are really a lot better than before, because I was kind of shocked that it was still using the old bolts that were sitting too low to the barrel, so it would give a lot of friction. Now the barrels and the nozzles are in line. There's no longer a friction issue going on that I overlooked in the past, so the cycling is a lot smoother. Combine that with the locked 5 pin, that it gives a lot of airflow to the nozzle to push the bolt back. It now can cycle heavy bolts back really easy. Fire rate wise, it's kind of hard to say, because it depends on how heavy you make your bolt, how slower it goes, but still pretty fast. It also will depend a little bit on the spring that you use for the bolt, and also the gas, and this is what makes it a little bit harder. You can find the data in the test data, but I also tested it with green gas, red gas, and with CO2. And you notice definitely with CO2, besides HPA of course, where I do a lot of my testing with. But you definitely notice with CO2 that it will kick the bolt back really fast, really aggressively, let's say. So that gives a different feeling to how the bolt feels and how the system cycles than with green gas or HPA. So this is something that you can play around with if you like. Something that you do have to keep in mind with CO2. I noticed with in the beginning that sometimes, because I did a lot of testing of course with different springs and bolt weights, that you kinda can run into light striking with CO2 in the beginning, but after a few shots then the same bolt setup was working on CO2, because then the pressure dropped a little bit and was enough for it to properly depress the 5-pin in the magazine, the valve, so it can cycle. But you can opt to bump the spring of the bolt a little bit higher up if you really want to plan to use CO2 only, to give it from the start and correct, so you can prevent light striking, let's say. So yeah, it has been a project with a lot of updates, but I hope that this will work out for you guys, like I did for mine. It's a lot more. For me, my model of course did also always work, otherwise I would not release it, but I do notice that this one is a lot better. And now with extra nozzle options, it's more easy for people to make than in the past. Then I want to mention why I don't make a partisan FA edition. That's really because the bolt doesn't really allow you to put a lot of weights inside of it. And that's the main thing. You could technically do it, and then you would kind of have to imagine that you only can use this weight, the one at the bottom, but that will still be quite mediocre, let's say. Weight wise, it's not really what you, if you want to build an FA, in my opinion, besides that it operates different, so it's fun to use, but it starts to be, let's say, really fun when you add the weight to it. It also gets more reliable with the new system. In the past would not necessarily be the case, but it was just more fun. But with this one you would be really on the edge of it being in a working condition or not, and because it takes a lot of time for me to keep up with all the models that are released, I will just keep this one on hammer fight editions, and with that one you can make it into a select fire edition, so you can shoot full auto with this one, but it would only be with a hammer fight edition, not with an open bolt. So that's really the reason for it. And also because I want to limit the amount of projects that are open, let's say, otherwise it takes really a lot of time every time to update things. But I hope that the most of the updating and reprinting parts for everybody and for myself and for the people who built one are over. Only again maybe some fine tweaking that I got some time around it, and I want to work on it. Then I might fine tune the AP nozzle a little bit better. But again, that is then only a new bolt and barrel retainer, and probably the 5-pin needs to be adjusted, but there are small parts. So no longer new uppers, lowers, or all different things that you need to reprint.